while we're waiting for the title slide to come up, Halito, I'm Redbird, and I'm a proud Choctaw woman of the First Nations of what is now known as America. And today we would like to talk to you about co-designing research agreements. And this paper has emerged from part of my PhD research, which is a project that is funded through AIMS at JCU, through an AIMS at JCU scholarship as part of the AIMS Indigenous Partnership Program.
All right, and my name's Gudju, and I just like to acknowledge my mob, Gimuy, Walubara, Yidinji mob, and elders from this country here, and all other traditional owners as well. So whether you're Yergai, Jabagai, Kunganji, with my mum's country in Kongai, or all the other clans, the Yidinji as well, that go down south and up into the tablelands. So, and my grandmother's country, which is Gimuy, up around Hopevale, Munbury, and also my grandmother from Yidinji as well, the Yunful country from the Mossman, Daintree, all that country up there, Port Douglas. Thank you.
So we'll just quickly provide a brief introduction to research agreements, and why they're so important, and why they're so vital to our research, and discuss our co-design process and the outcomes that we've achieved, and look ahead at projects that we're working alongside one another to maximize outcomes through our combined collaboration.
Yeah, and when we're talking about this, I think every project or anything that happens, we always start from a baseline. And when you're looking at a baseline, the first time I suppose any white fella knew about the Great Barrier Reef and anything else like that was when Cook ran his reef, like the Endeavour on the reef up there around Hopewell, and he thought, oh my God, there's a reef here somewhere. But that was all part of the Great Barrier Reef. The baseline for, non-Indigenous people started in 1770, while ours started 60,000 years, 2,500 generations. Not just that one generation of that one person hitting a reef and deciding that, hey, let's look after it or get rid of it because I bumped my boat on it,
So as researchers, we have a moral and ethical obligation to consider research agreements in our processes. So as documents, they're a negotiated, detailed living document that establishes a mutual understanding and participation from the very beginning of any project. They manage expectations between parties, and they underpin and support the accountability of researchers to the Indigenous community while promoting and supporting Indigenous leadership. We have an example here.
Because when we're talking about, I suppose, country and people on country, I think you got to look at it like, okay, our mob look after country and we look after the reef country as well. And we all had different roles and parts and stuff like that. It's just like the car, okay? The thing is if you got a car, you got somebody who's going to fix up your tires, someone who's going to fix up your wheels, someone's going to fix up your motor as well. It's just like everybody's got a responsibility. So you got to go to that person who's got the responsibility for that particular area. Don't just decide, oh, I can just go see one mechanic and he knows everything about the whole car and he'll fix everything. It's not like that. And it's the same for us mob. You can't just go to one mob and say, oh yeah, he's going to look after that whole country because he know all about that country. He don't. You got to go talk to all the different ones who've got and speciality in that area. And we all need to talk to all of them and support. And I think that's one of the things is actually looking at how we support that and how we can get those agreements in place when we're talking about research.
So research agreements are an essential element of ethical conduct in research with Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And they're pretty much mentioned or detailed in every code of ethics that we conduct research under. But there's very little in the way of guidelines, templates, or supporting frameworks for researchers, early career researchers, higher degree by research students, or Indigenous communities.
Yeah, so when we talk about ethics, I think the thing we're going to look at is what is ethics and whose ethics are we looking at? Are we looking at from whose perspective? Are we looking at from a traditional owner's perspective, the ethical, what we'd have to abide by in regards to our cultural ethics as well? Or are we looking at, the universities or any one of those infrastructures, or are we looking at it from a department of If we're talking about Great Barrier Reef, are we looking at the Great Barrier Reef's ethics and how they actually impose that on us or work with us? And, what is ethical? And when we're talking about what is ethical, from whose point of view is what is ethical? Is it from my perspective as a traditional owner, or is it from the universities or the institutions? What is their ethical requirements, and what are they, or what is it the government and what they look at being ethical?
So in building a research agreement, we need to think about levels of participation within the process of research or a project. And that engagement should be genuine and it should be inclusive. And it's not enough to just call a project participatory or to name it as Indigenous led. So small note, this comes from a publication that's not out yet, so please don't share it with anyone or put it on social media. And I hope you like it. It's an adaptation of Arnstein's Ladder of Participation, which was first published in 1969. So it's over 50 years old, these recommendations for how to have genuine levels of participation. But we still have it as something that we need to get better at, and it's still very relevant today. And I just thought I would point out, it's worth noting that like the roundtable, the Reef Futures Roundtable published report mentioned having a single traditional owner on each roundtable panel. And really that's still just a level of tokenism. It's called placation, where that person has a voice, but does not have any real power at the table. So our delegated power and citizen control at level 7 and 8 are the highest standard that recognizes Indigenous leadership and values local knowledges, as well as recognizing a community's voice within research and collaboration.
So when we talk about it and we're looking at that collaboration, especially when you're talking about, okay, we're going to talk to one black fella, because he's the fella that everybody sort of say, hey, yeah, that's the man you're going to go to, like, and stuff like that. And then when we start looking at, how that is all formulated, and especially the process of getting agreements as well as who you talk to and everything else like that, the processes for any future act notification, it goes through a native title process. But the thing is it goes through a government process first before it gets to a future act notification. And that's a 10-year plan that's been done 10 or 20 years previously before it gets to us. And then we only got 1 or 2 weeks to respond. Meanwhile, the government departments and all different institutes have had years and months to plan about what they want to get done.
Which links us to that statement that everybody's been talking about, which is engage early. I've told it to forward and it's not moving. So I'll give it one more try. Come on. And I've got 2 minutes left too.
Well, while we're looking at that, and I suppose before Redbird's going with that, I talked about the car, and stuff like that. If you're going to talk to one person, you don't just go talk to the guy who got to fix up your wheel when you're having trouble with your motor. The thing is you need to talk to everybody. So that's why you don't just talk to one person. You're going to talk to the whole group.
And talk to them at every stage of the research project, from conceptualizing of your project and your research through to capturing your data, working with the community to actively choose how and what you're going to capture, and then thinking about how you analyze it and what's culturally appropriate in terms of that. And then finally, a research agreement supports part of that process by also allowing you to establish very early on communicating your results through co-authoring, co-publishing, and co-presenting.
And I suppose when we're talking about co-presenting and co-authoring and everything else like that as well, becoming a co-author is a big thing. And the thing is those people that you actually have involved in your project, they need to be actually on there as well, on your report once you've done it, at the end of it as well. They need to be there as your co-author. But the thing, I suppose, that we find a lot is that when we ask to be involved in something, we're involved because you want us to be involved, not because we want to be involved. You've got a deadline, we don't. We're actually being imposed to have your deadlines fixed, not our deadlines fixed. And I think people need to actually have that in their mind when they're talking about these agreements and co-authoring as well. Because, when you're talking about deadline, if you're dead, he can't attack you no more. You know, that deadline. But you got to watch out for that leopard, you know, and that alligator and crocodile. But anyway,
Yeah,
our deadline is up now. Look, that's
so,
it.
we went through a process of co-design where we really was active participation in our project together from the very beginning, ethical frameworks, building our research agreement, hearing of what we each brought to the table, listening to one another and giving each other respect, thinking about how we value Indigenous knowledges and tribal science and that incredible value that brings to the table, and being able to elevate that by valuing and listening to it, sharing capacities and skills together to develop our project, and creating an inclusive agreement that we were both comfortable with being able to move forward, and also knowing that it's a living document that we can go back to.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, when we go to the next slide as well, I know we over time, our deadline's dead, but the thing is it's already coming back up now, not dead no more. But the thing is when we're working together as well, and I think some of the elements there that we've got up there, examples of it, you know, like available as well, public available to do stuff. And I think when we're talking about that, I think when we go to the next slide, I think that public availability.
That thing of in our research agreement, we can honor and respect Indigenous cultural and intellectual property rights. You can establish frameworks for data sharing, recognizing public, private, and privileged data. So that's really an important part of the conversation. And the outcomes of all of this are pivotal forward, working alongside. We can build common ground. Don't know what.
I think because of technical stuff, I think you got to add those minutes on.
Do we get extra time? So through building that common ground, our relationships, and having respect for one another, honoring sovereignty and self-determination with Indigenous communities, we've used an interactive approach that was established by Burich in 2019 that involves projects that the community identifies that meet their aspirations and work in tandem with the proposed research.
And this is one of our projects where we're working on country as well, but we're looking at the water management, because the water that flows off the land actually has impact on the Great Barrier Reef as well. We got a lot of mob on sea country, looking after sea country, and the rangers who are working on land country are looking through the waters as well and making sure that the water that gets out there is clean. So it's a bit like the Matilda soccer game. You get added on 10 minutes because there's no stop time. Okay. So yeah.
So in conclusion, research agreements are an essential element of any research project. We hope to publish our framework very soon with some guidelines, because they are achieved through and support high levels of participation. They establish a shared vision and a path forward through all cycles of parts of the research cycle, while underpinning research ethics are the recommended standard, and they can be co-designed to be satisfactory and supportive of all parties.
Yeah, and when we're looking at it, we're going to look at the why. Okay, the why. Whose why as well? You know, is it your why? Is it my why? Or is it collectively our why? And I think at the end of the project as well, I think we started at the beginning of whose why is it? And at the end of it, we need to actually look at whose why have we ended up with? And I think that's in conclusion. But anyway, we'd like to acknowledge all the people that have been part of this process. And if you want to buy some logos,
Yeah, go
Thank
get it.